I got company, I got company, I got company. I got company. Here it is, the second part for September 26th, pre-Sabbath. Turn your heads left or right before you cross the street. You're supposed to stop and wait. Cross the street safely. You're supposed to stop, you know, the stop here. Pedestrian street, and gotta be sure they press the brakes, you know, because if they don't press the brakes, they're gonna press the accelerator by mistakes, and sometimes brakes malfunction. And always double check, double check, double check. 26th of September, it is the second part of this pre-Sabbath, maybe 2 parts, 3 parts. We're gonna see tripartite, maybe do it at Holy Trinity and marching to the mountain, you know, crossing this bridge with the theme, let's build bridges between me, androgynous, pansexual, aspie, artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical, theoretical, honest, and tears, because we're now crossing in a bridge. We crossed it on the other side, so now we're going south, you know, south, and there's lots of metal, lots of steel, lots of cement, some brain and some muscles, and all the bridges which were built, such as this one, across the North American Collectif. And this is part 2. In the first part, you saw that I took some of those peanut butter sandwiches. There were several bags, and I took one for me, one for my anonymous friend, because last time she enjoyed it, and I said, yeah, thank you to those who increased my food security. You know, it's quite something which I gotta salute and be grateful for. And thank you, farmers, bakers, butchers, nurses, doctors, firefighters, plumbers, electricians, construction workers, and of course the farmers, too. Takes that wheat actually takes that wheat, you know, to make the peanut butter sandwich, and the peanuts, crushed them, and all the production, you know, several entities. I don't know about the peanut butter, the jelly, but there's jelly and peanut butter on the bread, but maybe it was probably bakery here in Montreal, Quebec, or Ontario, close by, you know. North America for sure, the bread, you know, it could be not imported from the US, because we have local bread, but we make a lot. We have wheat, we have everything we need. And as I just crossed the bridge there, with a theme, I guess, that we need to build bridges, you know, between myself as an N.A.C.W.P, somebody who's an individual sovereign citizen who lives with the neurodivergence known as Asperger's, and also known as HFA, and who's always grateful, thankful, you know, and for everything that I have in all the daily activities and the rights and routines with which I live by on a daily basis. It is constituent, of course, to be, of course, the appellations of all willingly loving to pledge your allegiance to our family, our friends will benefit solely. And in Montreal, Hawk Island, you know, and I'm pretty joyous now in the night sky. It's a pleasant day. It's about 20 degrees. It has that actually a bit of a summer windy hot breeze, you know. Now it feels a bit like the hot windy breeze of a late night kind of, you know, spring, late spring, early summer, June-ish, you know, June type of beginning of summer, end of spring type of, you know, like the month of June, with the first 3 weeks of June, you know, because on this 21st of June is first day of summer, so that equinox type of just before or right the first week of summer. That's kind of the sentiment, kind of the feel, how it feels like, although we're now autumn is the 26th of September, you know, and so it's autumn here. It's gonna turn, the leaves are falling, you know? You can see a lot of leaves, more and more leaves, you know, protruding to be. And got my brothers and sisters, there's boys and girls in blue. I always got to sing a little bit of that boys and girls in blue as I sing that rock and roll for not just the boys and girls in blue, but for the brothers and sisters who do their criminal rehabilitation, you know, and I gotta sing that rock and roll for them, you know. And I'm just financially stressed. My only stress now really is just financial, economic. Besides that, I'm always encouraging all to work out, train, exercise. It's always fun, you know, to commence your fitness journey. But I began kind of it's been a while for me personally. It's been ever since I crossed Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean. I guess you got enough of my face. You're gonna check out some of the city here. And you know, sometimes we go a little bit of zigzag and take a little bit of different routes, I guess, to just explore more in the night and in the day, morning, evening, such as this, post sunset, here in my neighborhood in Dedie, Montreal, and we have these elections coming in November 2nd. I'm kind of candidate, but I have my dream, the social political philosophy for the North American Collectif, as I am an androgynous pansexual, not just artist, athlete, and philosopher, but also independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, thinker, philosopher, and strategist. I develop strategies, geopolitical strategies, mostly for the North American Collectif. As you can check hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of my videos, which are involved with not just fitness. I have hundreds of those on my YouTube channel, but also on geopolitics. Gotta check those flowers, and I'm a flower lover, yellow flower lover, yellow flower lover. I'm a yellow flower lover. Gotta sing it as you see. Beautiful. Look at that. Thanks. I really, that just quadruples my. There's something about yellow flowers, all the red as I'm wearing red. The backpack, which now has more pounds because I got those red gloves, which were gifted in 2018 by my anonymous friend, who wasn't my friend because of the money, because I never had any. And that I had launched a campaign, Dragon versus Trump, and still challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match on the Canadian-US border. Let's build the Imperium People's Coliseum to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, aka the... Before that, it changed name. It used to be known as the Mercedes-Benz, and for that, Louisiana. So just like myself, I changed my name, and still gotta pay that money to officially have it. But with blood, sweat, and tears, Adrian H. Dragon died during COVID, being reborn. Adrian Hannah Dragon, keep my name out of your mouth. If it is not for a blessing, hope we have an understanding. Otherwise, be pestilence, be pestilence, be pestilence, be pestilence. So that's that rock and roll with that changing of the names, and yeah, that's the stadium in Louisiana changed names a few times during the past decades, and used to be known as the Louisiana Superdome, and then it changed names to Mercedes-Benz Arena. Then now the name is Caesar Superdome, so it changed names a few times, and that's where one of my top 5, the 4th favorite Super Bowl. Paradoxically, my 49ers lost, but even if they lost, they give up a good fight, and they lost by 3 points to the Ravens in Super Bowl 47. Many Super Bowls were fought, played, battled out there. Super Bowl 47 was one of my favorite. Super Bowl 47, and aka Harbor Bowl, aka Blackout Bowl, and Super Bowl 47, was something which I gotta get doing like that, and that is something which we have to be doing like that, Super Bowl 47, aka Blackout Bowl, Harbor Bowl, Bro Bowl, Harbor Bowl, Blackout Bowl. So several nicknames it has, that Super Bowl, and it was a very good one. One of my top five Super Bowls is that one, the Harbor Bowl, it's called, or Bro Bowl, or Blackout, also Blackout Bowl. 47, the number is Super Bowl 47. Yeah, that was one of my favorites, and the first 3 was, of course, when my 49ers win. We are 3-0, 3-0. Started the season off good. 3 wins in a row, eh? Go Niners, go. But last game, we only won by 1 point, 16-15. So that's for a 31 total score. Low score, but not that low. But relatively, I guess. Average is around. It depends. What's the average? We got to go season by season, right? But the average is probably around 44, maybe. Maybe something like that. Average, eh? Not necessarily, eh? Hey, that's a good question. What is the average? What has been the average so far? What's in the past? Let's say since, well, of course, there have been since 1967. If we were to go for the first, let's say 57 seasons, right? Then we could go for the first 50 seasons, let's say, or 56 even, let's say. What was the average, annual average of the scores when we take all the games which were played? I wonder, what is the average games? Not the playoffs and not the Super Bowls, but the average scoring per game in regular season for the NFL. That's something I'm interested in, because I like sports, fitness, dancing is my favorite sport, but of course, what I love most as a sport, it's dancing. Dancing is my favorite sport, although I love boxing, gridiron, North American football, please, NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB. Give some tickets to the firefighters, public workers. It's cost of living has increased tremendously. I gotta give a shout out again to that corner there in my neighborhood for that. There's a fridge, community food security corner. I call it the community food security corner, and I take more than I put nowadays, and I wish I could fill it up, and I'm just financially stressed. And discuss a little bit about Asperger's, because it's important, as it's who I am. You know that I'm also a mystic. I believe in reincarnations, and was born in the United States 3 times post 1776, once as a woman, twice as a man. When I was born as a man, served in the same United States Armed Forces, 2 different times, 2 different wars, same United States Armed Forces. Created that Draconis cadence fuse, Canada, United States, the 63 Imperial Democratic Republican complex. And of course, to also get the dynamic in the situational aspect, where we have the propositions, of course, to be that it is the 63, and always the dynamic is the reincarnations. I served in the same United States Armed Forces, 156 years apart, 2 different wars, and 156 years apart. Read George Patton, Through a Glass Darkly, if you're interested in reincarnations and poetry. One of my favorite poems, of course, is Through a Glass Darkly, Via, but it's actually Through a Glass, THROUGH, but I wrote my own poem, several versions of it, Via Glass Darkly. And George Patton believed in reincarnations, the U.S. General. George Patton believed in reincarnations, So he believed in reincarnations. I do believe in reincarnations, but also my reincarnations was sometimes a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a woman, a man, a man, a woman, a woman, a man, man, a woman, a woman, a man. So that's why you get 50-50 now. 50-50, It's always 50-50, and get the androgyny. Gonna let the soldiers pass. Gotta let the youth, always gonna get out of the way from the youth. Those, of course, who, for the youth, if they pass with children in the carriage, I always do the 4 steps protocol, see? 4 steps to the right, 4 steps to the left. Their joy, safety, securities, priority, as I march on these streets of Montreal. Many years spent with 1 foot in the past, 1 foot in the streets, 1 foot in the libraries. 1 foot in the streets, 1 foot in the libraries, and of course, many years. And now I'm just financially stressed. And by financially stressed is, of course, something which, we have to consecrate, of course, the complementary, of course, propositions where we are now to be, all the analysis where we got now. And of course, my only financial situation now is precarious. But besides that, of course, the stress is something which I don't have now. And of course, interjecting into capabilities, of course, of the domain where we are now, So that's just my only stress now. See, there's the voting. But I'm always open to work, business, some pleasure. And I have my theories, protocols, initiatives, and my own struggles, sufferings, and years of endurance and accepting, because it took me years and years and years and years to accept that I have Asperger's, because I'm part of that half of the population, officially there's about 0.44 of citizens with Asperger's or neurodivergent who are officially diagnosed. I'm semi-diagnosed, so I would say semi in a non-official manner, because, of course, in a non-official manner, so in a non-official manner, of course, we got that propositions where we are now to be, and of course all the domain where we have now to get on that goes. So of course all that, it's meaning to say that because I am part of the half who's unofficially diagnosed, and of course that unofficial diagnosis is in a way semi-official, because I've been semi-officially diagnosed by citizens, because my anonymous friend, who, if I make a million, gonna give half. And well, I've been told, that I have HFA, high functioning autism, also known as Asperger's, that I am on the spectrum, and for years and years I was refusing to accept it, and in denial for like 5 years, since about 2016 till about 2021, 2022, only about 44 months or so ago, 3.5 years ago, I accepted it. I said, yeah, it makes sense. I have all these problems, of course, and which I have, which are, of course, on the spectrum, is something which we have, of course, to be, and all the dynamics of being on the spectrum make my difference, and people with Asperger's who are different, we are predisposed, to these special interests, and of course these special interests are, of course, always coordinated to be, of course, in the plurality of the domain where we are now, to be interjected in all the sanitation, or basically the salvation. There's not a salvation in that sense, because there's no medication to salvage, or Asperger's cannot be cured because it's not a disease, but to build bridges, to build bridges is a constant thing which I have to do myself now. But again, it's been a tough road. It's not easy. It hasn't been easy. Myself as this tiny minority. There's not a lot of Aspies in the world. In North America, I'm a North American, but being a North American, we got to get drilling on that, and we got to get drilling on the go with that, and that's of course something which we have to be appellate, and of course in the normative situation where we are now, to be constructing, building, to be building bridges, bridges. Because that is the whole point, and because I don't have antagonistic feelings or negative feelings towards you, the majority of the 99% of the population, with that we gotta get doing with that to see, and all that complementary what we have now is something which we have to be in the discord of what Asperger's is and what Asperger's is not. So we have to complementary preposition ourselves where we have to draw the line in certain senses, is that Asperger's and autism is not a disease, right? So it's not a disease. It's not a disease, Asperger's. It is a neurodivergence. Our brains have these type of mutations, and I'm not going to address for now the proposition or the proposal or the speculation rather that Asperger's, autism, HFA, autism in general, and Asperger's has been merged with the spectrum of autism. It's HFA, high functioning autism, that it has its origins, the causes that are, it can be linked to, it's Tylenol is the company, but Tylenol produces, the medicaments that are used to treat certain ailments such as pain and physical pain, or headaches, things of that nature. But it's the acetaminophen, that is basically the ingredient, right? When I say that word, for some reason, I just get past triggers of previous incarnations. I'm a mystic. I believe in reincarnations, as I mentioned just before, that I was born in the United States 3 times, once as a woman, twice as a man, post 76. And I served in the same United States Armed Forces twice, 2 different wars, same army. The wars were 156 years apart. And read George Patton's Three Glass Darkly, one of my favorite poems there. The discussion about reincarnation is of course clearly discussed, but he does not mention that he was born a woman. He only mentions that he was born a man, So of course my reincarnations were sometimes a man, or sometimes I was born a man, sometimes a woman, a man, a man, a woman, until today you get 50-50, that androgynous, pansexual, Aspie, artist, athlete, philosopher, mystic, and geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist, and all that comes with that. And there's a gym. I've been on that fitness journey, love to see people working out and training, and got some nice jerseys here, and this one I never been, I think it's new. They opened up during COVID, and lots of places to visit here in Montreal. We love that French, and that's how we rock and roll about it. So back to, before I go into Asperger's, just gonna finish on the general George Patton, that he didn't mention, of course, that he was my wife. In a past life he was my wife, and I was his wife. So we were both each other's wife and husband. So we had a relation. Beautiful red on white here. I think that's a D for Deutschland. We had a relationship where I was his wife in a past life and he was mine. So in reciprocity, in the reciprocity that he was my wife and I was his in different incarnations, 2,600 years ago, 2,700 years ago, That was more than 25 years, 2002 millennia ago and 2,500 years ago. So that is, of course, all the circumstantial position of reincarnations aside. Back to Asperger's, where we have to draw the line is, of course, that we have, of course, to be congruent where we are now, to be on the side of the things where we suffuse ourselves with this dimension. So the dimension of autism is of course, being on the spectrum. So the spectrum is very ranges, okay? So the spectrum is of different sizes, if you will, not sizes necessarily, but different degrees of manifestation of course, of the autism spectrum. So it could be small, medium, large, and extra large, you know? So it could be small, medium, large, and extra large. So that is, of course, the dimension where we have now. So, of course, all that dimension of the spectrum is, of course, the dimension where we have that ourselves as neurodivergence is considered a milder form of autism. HFA, Asperger's. Asperger's was used, it's still used in common today, but Asperger's, of course, was used before, of course, and before it was used as Asperger's. Now it's used as the more common use is HFA, high functioning autism, right? High functioning autism. So the high functioning autism is, of course, proponent, of course, through the use, but I interchangeably use both Asperger's and high functioning autism. So of course that's what it is with that. So consequently, of course, we gotta be breaking that on the spectrum now. So basically it's this difference, you know. Hey. So it's not. Hey, that's the rock and roll, man. Hey. You know, so that is just what it is, and that is just the position where we are different, you know. So this difference is not evil, it's not bad, it's not negative, right? It's not bad, it's not evil, it's not negative. It is different, right? So it's not bad, it's not negative, it's not evil. It's not evil, it's not bad, it's not negative. It's not demonic. It's just different. But this difference can, unfortunately, cause us and has caused some misunderstandings. Most misunderstandings what it is, because I remember a few years ago I was working and I remember there were some whispers, gossip, like in French we said "c'est une maladie," so that's the translation is, you know, that's an illness, see? That's an illness, you know, but it's not an illness. But actually the translation is that's a disease. That's a disease, you know. That's a disease, you know. But it's not a disease, you know. It's not a disease, it's not an illness. It's just we see the world differently and we process information differently. And in my past videos, many videos, you see this weird, awkward, strange way that sometimes we perceive the world, the information of the world. For example, you know, sometimes I march, and now even when I see the cars, I always, in the back, the processes in the back of my psyche, although I'm focused mostly on geopolitics and discussing Asperger's, my journey as somebody who survived depression, who survived a vicious surprise attack years and years and years and years ago. Still have a new deadline, October 37, to retrieve my archives at the Jewish General Hospital. But for example, now, as we pass here, see, this is a gas station, so I check the price of gas at every gas station, and I check, of course, I do, of course, the consideration where we have now, that is 157, right, 157. So, of course, in February, 2020, the amount was, of course, that they paid, the amount was average 93 cents. 93 cents. That was the amount, 93 cents average in 2020. So now in my brain is mathematical calculations are going on. So you see it's 157, right? So that's Canadian, $1.57 to be specific, that's per liter, not gallon. That's not a gallon price, that's a liter, because a gallon has 4 liters. So it's $1.57. So let's calculate. Of course, from 157 minus 93, that's 7, and then you add 7 to 157, that's 64.9, right? So these mathematics, as you see in many of my videos, sometimes I see numbers and I calculate the half of the percentage right away, and sometimes myself, then I explain it, how I arrive to it, but sometimes it's just, the calculations is really a process in my brain, so because memory loss is not affected. The mathematical skills and knowledge of mathematics and linguistics and languages is now where personal memories is stored. So, because if you don't know a little bit about my story, and I have problems remembering my life prior to winter 2014ish, January-ish, February-ish, before February 2014, you know, I've run a retrograde amnesia. Sometimes it's caused by trauma, which I survived. I survived a vicious surprise attack. I was hit in the head a few times and hit my head on the concrete in the Montreal Metro, and had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder. I gave myself a new deadline by October 31st to go to the Jewish General Hospital to retrieve the archives, but I was bloodied up that day, and I was put on some meds. My right arm shoulder was cracked back, and just my life prior to like winter 2014, you know, I just have trouble remembering. But keep in mind that we're end of September now. So February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. That's 7 months. So 11 years and 7 months ago. But that's already a long time ago, right? 11 years and 7 months. If I calculate, of course, 11 years and 7 months, that is, of course, it's a long time ago to calculate it. So the calculation thereof is, of course, a long time. So that calculation, of course, is a long time. So, of course, to think about the appellation of the calculation thereof, that it is such a long time, it is, of course, the manners what we have now to be. What is that? I think they're doing something there. Oh yeah, that's French. I was wondering what kind of services did he offer. It's actually just, you know, things for the face, facials and stuff like that. That's what I was wondering what that was. What was that in French? So, of course, that is, of course, the whoever, you know, sometimes it's just, if I was a junkie, if I was doing drugs before that, hard drugs or alcohol, if I was doing alcohol, if I was drinking lots, if I was consuming drugs, and maybe that trauma or even the mold there could have caused it. I lived in you're gonna see my old neighborhood once we cross. So this street kind of further there, it kind of separates my new neighborhood and my old neighborhood. Still on the island of Montreal. It's nothing that I will to go back to. Just I live for today with hope and dreams and ambition and will for tomorrow. It doesn't really matter who I was. I live in my scars. I know I have a high school diploma. I graduated because 2014, winter 2014 is a long time ago. That's 11 years and 7 months. So 11 years and 7 months ago is still a long time. So to conclude it, that maybe salutations to the public workers who pick up our garbage, give them NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, please, some tickets, and finance them across billionaires, millionaires, finance them, public workers, a little bit of a massage therapy session, because I didn't even have where I used to live, and I moved where I live now. I thought it was 2016, but it's 2015 summer, so I've been living there for 10 years, and way better place. And I don't know how many years I spent there. I know for sure that it was at least 4 years, because I found some documents dating from 2011. So I lived in that moldy underground place. I didn't even have a kitchen, eh? The kitchen was in my room. It was like a tight prison cell. I always say I served my time there. And I've been safe, I guess, by the GODDSS, the goddess, in order, of course, to save somebody else. And I think I saved some people, and I did some good deeds, and I did some volunteering, and I suffered, struggled, and lost employment, and lost friends. And from now on, friends with benefits only. That's the solution. Don't waste my time. I won't waste yours. And always for the kingdom, the dream, the public-private partnership, and always for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, the grocery store clerks, construction workers, and all those doing on that drills, and the public workers, man. Finance them some kind of good loving. So I used to live in that moldy underground. It was like a tight, small basement, like a small prison cell. I didn't even have a bathtub. And I remember the bathtub. I didn't have a bathtub. I did not have a bathtub. But the shower, it was so small. The bathroom was so small, like a small prison cell, with a small room. And I moved from there to a better place, and that's where I live now. And I have a high school diploma. I graduated high school so I went to some college, but I dropped out. Many Aspies, people with autism and Aspies, are even from high school or higher education, university, college, there's a very high dropout rate, unfortunately, for my community, which is again a tiny small fraction of the population. So yeah, hope they have the archives of the Jewish General Hospital. I'm gonna have 4 deadlines by October 31st. One is to clean my room thoroughly, see if I can find my birth certificate, because maybe I was born underneath the Pentagon or East or West Berlin, which was it, maybe in here on the island Montreal, or Lugos, Transylvania, Romania, or here on the mountain Montreal. But I died here on the island. Here's one I want to live for the North American Collective. So many things to do, to visit, and I was depressed and suicidal. I crossed Canada 2017 with my anonymous friend, and that event made me establish, of course, the strong esprit de corps, and that strong esprit de corps has been developed ever since, and that was the dynamic event in my life which completely changed my whole life. I crossed Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean, August 2017. I went with my anonymous friend, and we went, of course, to BC, British Columbia, of course, Vancouver by bus. It was 3.5 days by bus. 3.5 days by bus, and that 3.5 days by bus was, of course, going and then coming back. And of course then we came back in Halifax, and of course then we went to Halifax, Nova Scotia by train, by train, and that is what it is with that, and that is what we gotta do, and that is what we gotta get that drill for. So of course we went to California. Correction, not by California. We will to go to California. That's one of my will. I said, so correction, we will to go. My will is to go also to California and all the 50 states, and of course coast to coast, ocean to ocean. That is, of course, the appellation where we have now, to be on the go with that, and on that beautiful event in my life where we have, of course, to interject and of course to appellate all our civilizational complexes where we are now, to be on the grateful side, because civilization is a privilege. Just having electricity, running water, drinking water. That was my thesis back in 2023. Civilization and its privileges, or actually the privilege of civilization, the privilege of civilization. That was my thesis with that, and that's what we have now. Listen, look. Lights, potable water, drinkable water, to take a shower, to bathe, to wash the dishes. Underneath there's so many, of course, so much work, so much tunnels, so many things, of course, to see, to do, and of course to see, to do with that, and to rebuild here the North American Collective. And back to what I was saying, of course, in calculation, because I live with Asperger's, being that I'm on the spectrum, that sometimes the tendencies or the use of too much sophisticated intellectual, academic, linguistic can be a certain barrier, and I know I'm always working on it constantly, and I gotta thank my anonymous friend, for giving me, of course, 2 books on it. I have the 2 books were donations. They were on autism, but they have chapters on Asperger's because they merged in 2013, 2014. They merged, they fused. Autism is now fused with the HFA autistic spectrum, milder form, considered a milder form, HFA, high functioning autism. Of course, it's considered a milder form that is high functioning, meaning that Aspies who are HFAs, like myself, also known as Aspies, that we don't need much support in that matter. We need a minimal support. It's more, myself as an individual sovereign with us, neurodivergent Aspie, I require more understanding, more understanding of what my difference is and how I perceive the world, how because of these brain mutations, and like I said, Tylenol is a brand. It's actually if it is, I'm not saying no or yes, I have to learn more, but if during pregnancy they use, because of that medicament, the ingredients in the medicaments can potentially cause autism, that remains to be seen. Just like I don't know if the ABC documentary from the corporation, ABC News Corporation, if their documentary pertaining and stating that actually Asperger's is an evolutionary process. I have to watch it again, have to, of course, do another deep analysis to see if that is the case for Asperger's, if it is indeed an evolutionary process. It could be. I don't know, because I'm not a neuroscientist. My special interest is geopolitics, and we Aspies, we have these special interests which we concord our whole being and we can spend hours and hours and hours. So of course, hours and hours and hours we can spend, of course, on the dynamics where we got now. Of course, to spend all the hours and hours and hours in the civilizational complex where we have now. Of course, to study, to learn, to analyze it, of course, to be on the dimension, of course, where we have now, to be on the congruent side, of course, of all the appellational, civilizational context where we have now and where we live, to be fully suffused and fully concentrated and so dedicated when we are involved in those special interests, also known as obsessive interest. So you can Google special interest, autistic, Asperger's, HFA, high functioning autistics or autism, and special interest, also known as obsessive interest. You can check yourself and turn your heads left and right before you cross the street. Turn your heads always left and right, double check, for myself as a prudence and other prudence, and all, of course, the jurisprudence what we have now inside the public sphere, just having this pedestrian is the privilege of civilization, because it was built with brains and muscle, and we all have the privilege of civilization, which was built with brains and muscle consequently, and of course that domain where we have now to be is the public domain. So in the public domain I have myself added responsibilities, duties and obligations. So that is something which we have to fully comprehend in the manners where we are now in the public domain. And as a private individual sovereign citizen, I'm no longer just a private citizen, I am part of the public. So it's a public-private partnership, just like my dream, the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, which is fundamentally to fuse Canada and United States, is a fundamental call for a public-private partnership across the North America Collective and the civilizational complex where we have now the dynamics be involved. Kind of like this, how it's done here. So I'm gonna go back to, forget where I used to live, a few kilometers from here, on Clan Ranald, in that moldy place, underground basement, and I moved from there, I moved to a better place, and I'm very grateful because I survived, and I spent a few years depressed, suicidal, I guess, with one foot in the streets, one foot in the libraries, many years. And if I go retrieve my archives from 2014 to 2019, in those 5 years, for sure more than 93% of the books that I was reading, because before COVID for a few years, and I was just reading, learning books, and most of them are related to history, politics, geopolitics, and things of that nature, of course, in the civilizational complex. Well, we have, of course, to be endeavored, of course, in the love affair we have with our civilizational complex, which needs to be addressing the fundamental reharmonization with nature. So without being too intellectual sophisticated, it's a call basically to and for the DGA, the Dancing Goddess Army. Dancing is my favorite sport. ILOVE, priestess of the goddess, 2-in-1, androgynous, pansexual, and dragon gets that priestess always for the truckers on the road, the butchers, bakers, nurses, firefighters, and the plumbers, the electricians, construction workers, Construction workers build those buildings, and you got those firefighters, you got the plumbers, you got those daycare workers changing diapers, you got the nurses, you got the electricians, you got the welders, you got all the workers of the past 20th century who built the highways to allow all that we have now. And I gotta give a shout out to the truckers, and and my specialty is geopolitics, rock and roll, and dancing, fitness, sports, 24/7, that trinity. And we Aspies, and I've suffered a lot. We're a tiny community. I'm part of the half who's, although myself I'm semi-officially diagnosed, because several citizens for more than 9 years now have been telling me, but for 5 years plus I refused it. I didn't want to accept that I am different in such a way that I'm on the spectrum and I have Asperger's, because although there has been more and more work done in the 21st century, we have to understand that it's not a disease, right? We have to understand that it's not a disease. So it's not a disease. That's why we have, of course, to fully comprehend that it's not a disease, it's not an illness. It is a neurodivergence. And yes, the neurodivergence, of course, can be, of course, all the situational aspects where we are now to be fundamentally in the civilizational complexities of all the domain where we have now, to be, and of course to live, and all of these things which we have in common are the dynamics where we are now to be on the go. And of course that's what we are, and that's what we be, and it's something which we got to be knowing, so that's how we are to be, and that's what it is, and that's what we gotta get doing, so you gotta get on that drill, so that's all the civilizational aspects where we have now to be, on the, look at that, and some cleaning to do, so all that, of course, to be stated and suffused in the integral manner, of course, of all the life-affirming civilizational complexes as we are endeavor to be now. I used to come do laundry here and at the other place, mostly at the other place that you see in past videos in my own neighborhood, but I remember sometimes when that was closed sometimes, and I used to come do it here. But I'm grateful, thankful, gotta give a shout out to my anonymous friend for getting the washer and the dryer. And now I don't have to spend money. Thank you. And wish I could give $1 million, $1 billion, $1.5 trillion, I guess. But I used to do it over there, and I used to spend some money. So now I guess I spend less money on that, and that's always good. Yeah, I used to do laundry in the laundromat, but thank you, appreciate it. The washer, the dryer, it's a maintenance. All this civilizational complex is a maintenance. My ideas, protocols, of course, the maintenance thereof for the ideas and the protocols which we have thereof, of course, to be concomitantly and conversely to just have these apartments. I don't know how much the rent is, I wonder how much the rent went up, because of course I'm always calculating the price of cost of living increase, and like I just said before, a priori, we had that domain, of course, we have, of course, the total suffusion of the realities of the cars now spending, but it's not the cars really, it's the drivers, the citizens, who are paying more. So I'm gonna give you an example of how my particular N.A.C.W.P brain works. So I would as I pass by that gas station, I'll see that it's 157. So I always would go to the information that I know before COVID, February 2020, that the average price of gas was 93 cents. And then I would calculate how much it is that the price has increased and how much in percentage has increased for the consumer, citizen consumer there, and how much it possibly affects their purchasing power, right? For example, these 4 cars here, 1, 2, 3, 4. What is constant? It's their gas consumption per 100 kilometers, right? When the engine is turned on. So basically it would be for 100 kilometers, for 100 kilometers, for 100 kilometers. So of course, that is what it is with that, and of course that is the calculation, of course, of what we have now. So of course all that domain, and of course all that appellation what we have now to be in the congregation, of course, what we got, and all that domain is the plurality what we got, of course, to do. We have, of course, to be in the confluences, of course, what we got, of course, to be doing on the go. So that is something which we have, of course, to get. So that is now the situational aspect, and the proposition is that the constant is the gas expenditures. Correction. No correction. It's actually the gas expenditure or consumption rather per 100 kilometers. So that's always constant. That will not change for cars. Those 4 cars, these 4 cars, other cars, all the cars. Right? So that's a constant. That means mathematically it doesn't change. What does change is the price of gas. So the price varies. The price has changed, right? From 93 cents average in February 2020 to now being an average of about 1.50. It's now about 163 for the month of August, and September it's about the same, although it went down a bit. It's going up again. It went up 4 cents now, or 5 cents, because it was 152, where it was 166 last week at one point, last Monday. So about 10 days ago, it was 166. So that's the variable, so that's the variable. So that is always a variation, the price of gas, right? But the consumption is always the same. So what a car has paid for XYZ amount for the consumption, of course. For example, the car that was in circulation, I'm not talking about cars that were produced after, because they were, but the majority of the cars, let's say, that are now driving, majority are made fabricated prior to 2020. But of course it's still a constant, because the amount doesn't change of how much they consume per 100 kilometers. So the distance. Gotta be careful. They gotta drive safely, man. Drive safely. I drive these boots, turn your heads left and right, and see here, you gotta turn your heads left and right, man. And be careful on the road, man. Brothers, sisters, gotta be careful on the road. And this is a beauty here, and that's a beauty with that, and that is, of course, something which we have, of course, to do, and there is something which we have, to do it on the go. So that's just something where we gotta get that appellation to be, and now, of course, we have to always turn our heads left or right, and that is, of course, the situation that the gas consumption is, of course, the price is increasing. The price is increasing. So, of course, meaning that the price is increasing, that is something which we have, of course, to be. So meaning that, of course, the price increases. It is, of course, all the situational perspectives that, of course, the increase of the price affects the wallet. So that affectation of the wallet is, of course, the affectation of the wallet is, of course, the problem. With so much gas, they still have the constant of XYZ amount that they each and every one of these cars consumes XYZ ABCD. The constant is how much they consume. So you got to be careful there and there on both sides. And of course, how much they consume, how much they consume is a constant. It's always the same, but the variable is the price they paid. The price was average in 2020. February 2020 was 93 cents. So that means that it's about increasing of about 74%. 74%. 74. About, let's say 75. So if that 75, of course, is a percentage, which is, of course, majestic, increase, of course, in the proportionality of which we have now. So, of course, all that proportion is, of course, to say that they, of course, are paying more. So, of course, all the situational aspects where we have now, of course, to be, are all that it's the reality, to sum it up without being too technical, too mathematical. The citizen consumer loses purchasing power. In other words, you buy more, that's a grocery store clerk. And grocery stores, go grocery store clerks. Salutation to the warehouse workers, grocery store clerks. And I got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 just in time to check out these sunflowers. Beautiful. Thank you. I really love it. I just love sunflowers and the yellow, because I love yellow flowers. And it's quite something fertile here. Hey beauty, kiss a kiss. That's nice, This with that, and that's how they go with that, and that's what we gotta get doing on that drill, So that's something which we have, of course, to get when we get on that loving side of things. We gotta get on that aspects where we got to get doing, and nice. Look at that, man. Just love them here. It's so much embellishing my route. So, for example, take this car. This is delivering food, pizzas, right? This is a pizza place. So that car was paying an average of 93 cents in 2020, early 2020, February. Now, last month, paid an average of about 163. So it's 75 more about. That's 75 cents per dollar. So if in 2020 February he spent $1 per gas for the same distance, basically, right? That's mathematically, simplistically mathematically what I'm saying. Per distance, it paid $1. Now the money is $1.75. $1.75. So that means that is 75% more, and that potentially sucks. And that's why the prices of food has increased and other prices, because the majority of the trucks are, of course, still, some are more hybrid, we don't really have that many electric yet, but of course are on gas. So thus, there's a correlation between the increase in the price of gas and the prices of goods increasing, and thus related directly to the increase of the cost of living. So that I'm doing constantly. I've been doing it for years, especially in the past 3 years, when at one point I remember gas about 3 years ago or so, between 2.5 and 3.5 years ago, at one point gas was 225. I remember 225.4. That was the highest that I remember. Maybe it was even higher than that, but at one point I remember I saw two. So that's more than double, way more than double than it was at 93 cents average. Can you imagine? 225. So for like a few days, a few weeks, it was in the more than $2. A few weeks, it was more than $2. It went down a bit, but it's of course the relation of OPEC as well, because technically here in Canada we cannot extract it so much because the extraction is a costly endeavor. We don't really have, of course, the technical, that is financially, the technical means yet, and the feasibility in terms of the financial matters, meaning to say the financial aspects parallel to the ecological ones, because it's still a pollution. But technically the tar sands in Alberta we have among the best, in terms of barrels, billions and billions and billions, enough trillions of barrels of potential oil in the tar sands in Canada, the Alberta oil fields, what's known as the Alberta oil fields, right? So in Alberta, so technically we have those billions and billions of barrels to sustain for all the North American market. We wouldn't need to import, in other words. The United States wouldn't need to import either. The United States wouldn't need to import either, you know? So we wouldn't need to import. But only over the past decades and in the 21st century, more and more environmentally friendly. Extraction is not really the extraction, but when you extract it and how you change it, the process to turn it from the bitumen to turn it into viable petroleum, consumable petroleum. It's costly at the moment. It still is costly. It has been reduced. But it's still costly, and it's still environmentally, it's still damaging the environment. So the damage to the environment is still considerable. So that's why we don't do it so much, right? So, but if you would be able to extract it without harming the environment and in a economically feasible way, that would be like paradise, right? Because we would have so much of it, because we do have, but it's in the tar sands. See there, you have those four antennas and a webcam. This is new. See, you see it blurred on the camera, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4. See the little antennas? See? 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's red, but it kind of looks purple when you look at it. And you see those antennas there? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you see them better. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a microphone. So I said across the 63, across the North American Collective, we should have implementing thousands of webcams for the mass public-private partnership for what I call the new Dragon North American 911 Citizen Integrated Security Service and Defense Complex for the creation of the Dragon Army, aka the Integrated Imperial Legions, for total security, total service, total defense, and to have across North America, Canada, United States via public-private partnership, to have mass webcams like that webcam there, that's a webcam, and of course where citizens can access via home, and to have mass places where citizens can go and monitor all the highways, everything that's coming in via the ports and the airports. A massive total security, total service, total defense complex, and my theories and protocols, which I'm going to discuss. But of course the new 911 Dragon North American 911 protocols for total security, total service, total defense is something that I've been discussing, especially since COVID, and to the fact that I predicted what's happening now, and that I'm going to cross the street. So there's my old neighborhood. There's my old neighborhood. But kind of there where my old neighborhood commences. But it kind of begins at this corner here. This is kind of what separates my old neighborhood from my new neighborhood. So nothing that I will to go back to, and that's just how we're gonna drill it with that. And always gotta be grateful, thankful, you know, my rent's paid, electricity bill is paid, got food and coffee, and that's how we're gonna go drill it on the other side, and make sure, of course, nothing that I will to go back to. Sometimes I do go shopping because some prices are very good in my own neighborhood, and sometimes I go to the movies in my own neighborhood because Tuesdays is $5, and the movie that I want to go see is Him. I want to go see the movie Him because I like dancing and gridiron sports and fitness, and I want to go see the movie Him and do an analysis, I guess. And well, I saw some reviews, and when I saw him getting hit in the head, I remembered of me being surprise attacked. I don't know if it was with a blunt object. I remember I was hit in the head a few times and hit my head on the concrete, and I was bloodied up, and had a dislocated right arm. I gotta go retrieve my archives at the Jewish General Hospital, but that's when I saw that in the previews. I'm like, that's what happened to me years and years and years ago. So here when I come, that's where my old neighborhood I used to live over there. So I used to live over there, of course, and that's where I used to live, and right there. I used to live a few miles there, and always when I come here. So now to show a little bit of a demonstration of how my ASPE brain works a little bit in a more mathematical manner, sometimes in calculations of the percentages of the cost of living and the increase, of course, in the cost of living and the expenses thereof, that I see that's all these cars, they're paying about 75% more on gas than what they paid in February 2020. So that has sucked a lot of their wealth, a lot of their purchasing power, or out of their affordability crises. Stems, of course, from the fact that now all of these cars are paying regardless of how much their consumption is per 100 kilometers or per 100 miles or kilometers, how many gallons or liters, whether it's 11 liters, 12 liters, 13 liters, 13.4 liters, or per gallons. If it's 3 gallons per 100 kilometers, that's 12 liters, right? Because it's times 12. So that is, of course, just the fundamental aspects of the dynamics of that calculation. So here's nothing that I will to go to, but of course it is the environmental aspects which we have now to go all the way up with that. So here, that's where my old neighborhood begins, here at the corner. So when I go south, when I go north is that way, kind of this street on that corner. That's my old neighborhood. This is my new neighborhood, and there's nothing that I will to go back. Just living for today and advancing, of course. The advancement is we're going to the mountain, and it's always something that I gotta meditate upon, because I'm pretty joyous, I'm pretty happy, content, but just stressed financially, and gotta say my gratitude with that rent, paid my electricity bill and got food. Thank you. I got the backpack for me and for my anonymous friend. Got some sandwiches, got some peanut butter sandwiches, and I love some of those lights. Getting on that holidays, and October 31st coming, so I'm just gonna finalize on Asperger's, and we're just gonna drill it on the side of the discussions. So these discussions around autism is, of course, my gratitude to my anonymous friend, where, of course, I myself have to, of course, say and, of course, stipulate, I myself, of course, have to stipulate that Asperger's, and insist that people don't use the word sickness or disease when discussing Asperger's. Sickness or disease, it's not a disease. Yes, okay, disability. I'm saying that in certain things I am less able, less able. So being that I'm, of course, less able in certain things, that's always complementary to the other things of which we can really excel in. So we can really excel in certain things, especially those things that are our special interests, which preoccupy our daily routines and habits with such an intensity. And that intensity, concentration, super dedication, super focused, super involvement is when we're engaged in what's called special interest, also known as obsessive interest, although I don't use myself obsessive, because obsessive is more from a neurotypical perspective, from a neurotypical perspective. Obsessive, it's for us is more a natural thing to do, and Aspies, myself included, can find a lot of joy and purpose in those special interests. And my trinity is geopolitics 24/7, and since I have a high school diploma and I have a reference letter from high school, although I don't remember my life prior to winter 2014, January-ish, February-ish 2014. Before that is a blackout. Sometimes memory comes back with some hypnosis, or sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does, and it doesn't really matter. That's a long time ago already, 11 years, 7 months. What matters is when I got out of depression, my life beginning now, the 4th time, and having crossed Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean. Those are the fundamental aspects where we have, of course, now to be on the side of all the plurality of our engagement and our social dynamics, where we are involved now, to myself as an individual Aspie, for my fellow Aspies, neurodivergents and autistics, and fellow LGBTQ community. And don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. It's friends with benefits only. Friends with benefits only, Friends with benefits only. Pledge your allegiance, legions. Friends with benefits only. Pledge your allegiance, legions. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean, to our family. And we are different, strange, bizarre, weird, awkward, but Aspies, we're not evil, bad, negative, or demonic. So I'm just gonna finalize on that. Just gonna finalize on the 4 main problems and the solutions that Aspies face, with the 4 main bridge sizes that we have to build and construct. We have to build bridges, and sometimes they're just like when you order a coffee or a fries, you might order a small coffee or fry, a medium sized coffee or fry, a large size coffee or fry, extra large coffee or fry. So within those 4, you might order consecutively one of those 4 sizes: small, medium, large, extra large. Depending on the day, variations, XYZ, etc., etc., etc. You might order an extra large, a medium, a large, or small. So thus we have to build between us Aspies, who are less than 1% of the population, neurodivergents, autistics, people with autism, HFA, high functioning autism, and you, with which myself I have no antagonistic feelings, I have no negative relations towards, I have no resentful feelings, negative emotions, or things of that nature. So we got to build the bridges. It requires a reciprocal effort, and that reciprocal effort is a constant effort, which it has to be. We have to build it. So now the dynamic goes, and the interaction of the dynamic goes as such that we have to fundamentally represent this awareness of the fact that Asperger's is not a disease. As I told you, I heard it, I overheard it. Ah, my eye. My eye's fine now. Just for like 4 seconds it was. Had to blink, God is blessed. It's always God bless and God is kiss, God bless and God is kiss, always God bless and God is kiss. So Asperger's, not a mental illness, that's where we have to draw the line, where Aspies are, or autistics are characterized, seen, depicted as evil, bad, negative, malicious, or demonic even, right? Demonic even, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, we can be weird, we can be eccentric, we can be odd, we can be odd, weird, strange, bizarre, but that's not evil, that's not bad, that's not negative, that's not malicious, it's not demonic, it's certainly not illegal, Although unfortunately some Aspies and go to court sometimes because of these dynamics of social communication and certain things which you can do in public, which you can't really do, and then you break certain norms and protocols, and you might end up in front of the court, and then probably the judge says, what a weirdo, is this person has no filter, and that's another problem, eh? But it's not really a problem, it's just because the concept of a filter for us is a bit alien-esque. We're kind of like aliens, extraterrestrials in a bit. It's a concept that we have to work on it. Thank you, anonymous friend, for renting 4 times the book called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, and because it was a library loan, and that book made me self-aware of how my own vulnerabilities, and because of this difference, how I myself can be vulnerable in certain things, because Aspies, we have trouble sometimes knowing when somebody wants to harm us, and the mockery, the social dynamics, the gossip, the mockery, the things of that nature can be difficult. But thanks to that book, Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, that is always something which I gotta be mindful and thankful about, because of course that dynamic, and I gotta cross now, gonna wait. So of course that aspect, and of course that relationship is of course, as we have to proponently, with vigor as well, do the work, and it's a reciprocal thing. So I have to always manage, because you can't medicate because there's no medication. So I have to manage, right? Manage the characteristics and traits. So managing the characteristics and traits is always something which, of course, the management thereof of these characteristics and traits can come with an effort, and it's a reciprocal thing, I always admire construction workers when they build here, how they build it. They build it really fast, just a few months. Quite amazing, man. When I see those cranes, they go up in the cranes. Quite something, I guess. I wonder how much rent will be if they have to rent or whatever. It's kind of nice. I like it. It's circular, right? Like a circle. It's kind of special. I wish there could be a little bit of color in it, but look at it. It's kind of special, kind of special. Kind of special. So that specialty, of course, is something which you have to work on in the plurality, of course. But I don't know. It looks a bit Colosseum, like a Colosseum, And I will to build the Imperial People's Colosseum together there. Let's build the Imperial Colosseum together there. It looks a bit, Colosseum-like. So I will to build the 4444 on the Canadian-US border, the Imperial People's Colosseum. And this is, of course, just one of it, which kind of looks like it. So if you don't know what I'm making a reference, I'm going to quickly interject before I finish on Asperger's, that, of course, my will to build together the four for our coming of our empire of the 63, let it rise and let it be, to, of course, build on the Canadian-US border the Imperial People's Colosseum. For me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate it in a boxing match. We're going to build the biggest ever Canada-United States joint as we're going to fuse in the Democratic Imperial Republic. We're going to build the biggest ever Colosseum ever built. Imperial Colosseum, the Imperial New American People's Colosseum of the Empire of the Dragon Trump Colosseum on the Canadian-US border, where we're going to have sportists and perpetuities, and me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate it, and we're going to inaugurate it, and we're going to have high schools and NFL, NBA, NHL, some events 24/7. We're going to have sports events, women's sports and other sports, and I'm just going to cross on this side here. You can only cross on that side, and then we're going to go all the way to the mountain. So I will to build 4 with your help, construction workers, rock and roll. And here we got some potholes to fix. We got a lot of work, We got a lot of work across the North American Collective, and that's what we do, of course, to get it. And of course, the Imperial People's Colosseum is something which, of course, we have to build on the Canadian-US border to be the biggest ever sports arena Colosseum which was ever built in the history of mankind. Imperial American People's Colosseum to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. Now, before that, it used to be known as the Mercedes-Benz, and before that, Louisiana Superdome. It changed names several times, and has changed names several times. That's what it is with that, and that's how we gotta get on that drill with that. So it changed names several times, and of course 3 times, just like myself, I changed names. But of course, being reborn now. My fourth rebirth since about March 2014, I would say. March 2014. I don't know, again, if prior to that, maybe I was a junkie, maybe I was doing drugs, that's why I lost memory, or that vicious surprise attack. I'm curious to have the archives. When was it? Because I'm gonna go by October 31st. I gave myself 4 new deadlines to go retrieve my archives, clean my room, try to find a birth certificate, and try to find other documents, and try to find other things, and try to write some emails for the Empire, Kingdom, Public-Private Partnership, and pledge your allegiance, and of course, write some rock and roll and propose for the 3rd time. My anonymous friend, for the 3rd time. His guy got 2 no's at the beginning, so gonna have to maybe do it like Joe Biden. He proposed supposedly 6 times to Joe Biden, who was the president before Trump, between the first presidency of Trump and vice president twice, and he proposed supposedly 6 times until the 7th. Till the 7, which he got a yes. So the legend goes, so the story goes. But I proposed twice, I got a no, and it's going to be a special marriage. I'm androgynous, pansexual, If it is, if I get a yes, it's gonna be a special marriage, but who's gonna marry me, I guess? Just a nobody, but I'm good at geopolitics, I'm good at dancing, and not necessarily vocal rock and roll, but I could just definitely spit those lyrics and spitting those lyrics on the proponent where we have now. It's spitting those lyrics on the go, and it's something which you have to fulminate upon. So without that fulmination, for now, we're gonna say that I also will to build parallel to the Imperial People's Coliseum, People's Coliseum. That is something which of course we're gonna do. We're gonna have, of course, the Forgotten Goddess Temple. So to build, of course, the Forgotten Goddess Temple is something which I will to build to be 11 times bigger than the here in Montreal we have what's called the St. Joseph's Oratory. In Montreal we have a building called the St. Joseph's Oratory, and of course St. Joseph's Oratory I will to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple 11 times to be bigger. Our Goddess Temple. Forgotten Goddess Temple. Forgotten Goddess Temple. The Forgotten Goddess Temple. The Forgotten Goddess Temple. Forgotten Goddess Temple. Geodidia says she doesn't need me or anybody to build her the temple because she's got the pyramids and I'm just a piece of dust and N.A.C.W.P financially stressed, but rebirthing fourth time I guess since March 2014 in the past 11 years and a half. I guess I died during COVID. I was depressed, suicidal. I got out of that moldy place, underground place, and accepted my difference about 3.5 years ago, aspiness, and here we're gonna rock and roll to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, the Imperial People's Coliseum, where me and Donald Trump are gonna inaugurate it, and each month we're gonna have events, sports events dedicated to different groupings, of course, where we have, of course, the different groupings, and of course those different groupings are gonna be for the firefighters, the butchers, the nurses, the construction workers, the daycare workers, all different. Every month we're gonna have different workers, of course, who are gonna be IT workers, butchers, bakers, nurses, and firefighters, and security workers, and train conductors, welders, truckers on the road now across the 63, delivering the bacon, the cheese, the peanut butter. Thank you again for donating those sandwiches, peanut butter sandwiches. That is always that rock and roll with that, and that is of course always the appellative where we have food security for myself. Thank you for increasing my food security because it adds in my financial security. Food security, it's counterbalancing financial security. It's kind of reciprocally and parallel and balance, and everybody gotta eat. Even Wall Street, everybody gotta eat. Even Wall Street, everybody gotta eat. Even Wall Street. So back to the building of the Forgotten Goddess Temple. I will to build it, and Imperial People's Coliseum, and the House of the Dragon, pyramid, and a scarlet crimson. Beautiful flowers, look at that. Gorgeous. And these ones too. The House of the Dragon to be a pyramid, scarlet crimson, or of course shades of red, red, my favorite color. And the fourth one to be the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow queer community, LGBTQ community, being queer, N.A.C.W.P myself, and queer. I guess my sexuality would be comedy more than anything else. But between adults, friends with benefits only, don't waste my time. I won't waste yours. Pledge your allegiance to our family. And I guess, yeah, I have a weird, awkward, strange, weird, bizarre sexuality. I'm not sexually frustrated, by the way. I would discuss it if I would be, but I'm not necessarily looking. I have a healthy, just gonna check so that there's nobody. I have a healthy masturbation, I have a pretty healthy masturbation. That's my little dick, androgynous little clitopene. Got that androgynous genitalia. Sometimes goes rocket, R-O-C-K. Rocket fused up, Starlink. Go up to the Starlink satellites up in the sky. Rockets to fuse sats in a parallel life. I am also an N.A.C.W.P. It is the year of darkness, November 25th. 2029, I launch, built with others in consortium, satellites. I build supercomputers, microchips, 3G communications, everything to do with satellites, satellites, telecommunications, everything to do with satellites and microchips, computer science. I build, design supercomputers, satellites connected, antennas, 3G, 4G, 5G, and 6 and 7G. In that 2029, it is the year of darkness. 2029 in that parallel life where when I connect with my parallel self and teaches me science and technology and satellites, telecommunications, sats and microchips and all things about supercomputers and gadgets, and I sing that rock and roll, and we give each other headaches. Let's say we give each other's headaches. So he gives me headaches, I give him headaches, reciprocally, in reciprocity. With my rock and roll, and but my parallel self also struggled for many years. So that's that dynamic, and that's that characterization, and that's what we have, and that's where we live, and that's where we are now, you know, in that joy. And you know, I have my routine, and kind of like love, you know, in a certain parallel manner where we have now to be. And that, of course, it is something which is suffused to incorporate, because Aspies, we have these routines, we have these ritual like routines, and I don't mind change that much, especially when it comes to financial, you know, but we have these routines, you know. So my fitness journey began after I crossed Canada coast to coast, and that crossing Canada coast to coast, really, before that I was depressed and suicidal, and that's something which affects Aspies a lot, you know. It's a 9 times higher rate of suicidal tendencies and suicidalness. So suicidal tendencies and depression is 9 times higher for Aspies. And crossing Canada with my anonymous friend, coast to coast in 2017, summer, August and September, that event made me have like a revelation, and I established a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians. I love crossing Canada, and that was really something which I encourage all to do if you can. And even through the DRT, my debt refusion theory, we're gonna finance it. My debt refusion theory, we're gonna, of course, finance it via my DRT. The debt refusion theory, we're gonna finance, because it's incorporating a strong esprit de corps, and it's rejuvenation, it's establishing a strong esprit de corps, it's seeing what we have as a great North American civilizational complex. My brothers and sisters in the 50 states, I was born in the USA 3 times, post 76, served in the US Army, same US Army, 2 different wars. Just read George Patton, 3 Glass Darkness, aforementioned the Privee. George Patton was my wife, and I was his in a past life. 3 Glass Darkly, one of my favorite poems. It is about reincarnation and wars and fighting and civilizations across times. And George Patton, the general of the U.S., the Third Army, Second World War specifically. So, of course, now that we are in the 26th of September 2025 and having survived COVID, and of course that is the appellation where we have now to be on the situational awareness, where we are in Concordia, to always be on the appellative, of course, on the dynamics where we incorporate and build bridges between us neurodivergents and you neurotypicals, that I have to bring a lot to the table, not just those trillions of kisses, 718 trillions of kisses created from the forgotten goddess, with trillions of steps, marching steps, and rock and roll and cadence and geopolitics, which we're going to get into in a minute. But just to finalize that the main problems that Aspies face, lack of friends, lack of friends. We tend to lose friends and don't keep friends a long time. That's why I got the solution. Friends with benefits only, because for neurotypicals, which are you, the majority of the population of more than 99%, are neurotypical. So we have to build bridges, and it's not always easy to build these bridges or be friends. That's why, to be clear, so that we don't waste each other's time, I don't waste your time, you don't waste mine. It's friends with benefits only, friends with benefits only. And I work out, train, exercise, or that, friends with benefits only, or pledge your allegiance. You want to see my dream, the Imperial Democratic Republic, the NORAD NATO complex transformed into 21st century Concordia, Imperial S-Force, and for total security, total service, total defense. And that's why we have, of course, to get on that, and that's why we got to get on that appellation to be. So, of course, all that information, as relative, of course, it is for the Asperger population to build the bridges, and of course to be suffused integrally and integrated in the population. And that, of course, integration in the population is the domain where we have now to be aware of all the civilizational progress that we have made, and that civilization is a privilege, and this constant work, so but the work is more of an independent nature, because the work is independent mostly, and the independent work which we have, of course, to do is continuously. So it's kind of basically automatic. It's not something that's basic. It comes automatic to us, what we do as aspies. You know, for example, if an aspie would have science, technology, or other things as a special interest, or architecture, just studying, learning every day about that topic and reading it, staying informed, it comes naturally. It's not even, you know, it's just a natural, like a automated software update. Think about it that way, or think about it just like a natural thing that occurs in nature. That is just our nature. For example, if I spend hours and hours a day infused, super concentrated, super engaged, super concentrated, super in it, super intense about it, super focused, when I revise geopolitical events, because there's three things which I say never sleep, eh? Money never sleeps. Money always buys, selling everywhere. Now somebody buys and sells from Montreal to San Francisco, across the world. Somebody's spending money, not just Canadian dollars, US dollars, euros and shekels and yens, but other currencies as well. And of course, the sun never sleeps, because the sun always rises, always sets. There's always a sunrise and always a sunset. Every second there's a sunrise and a sunset somewhere in the world. So every second there's a sunset and a sunrise somewhere in the world. Every second. And of course, geopolitics is the same, because every hour, because of the time zones, somewhere the sun rises, it's noon, it's of course morning, and of course every sunrise or sunset, there's of course a dimension where we have now that, of course, there's geopolitical events across the world, from Asia to, of course, Japan, South Korea, North Korea, China, Australia, which now it's kind of in the morning, you know. So now it's the morning for them, if you calculate, of course, that there's the morning side. So of course, besides geopolitics, is the sun never sleeps. But we don't usually think about that, right? So every second there's a sunrise, if you think about it. Every second there's a sunrise and a sunset, right? The sunset and sunrise somewhere in the world, it occurs now. So it's just the prepositions, just like, of course, geopolitics is, of course, the same with geopolitics. That is, of course, occurred. Every moment, every, of course, other hour, there's a geopolitical event, of course, where we have, of course, to be now. And, of course, that is something which we have to be, of course, understanding about in the focus of our conversation, of our topic, that those, of course, consciousness and that dynamic is, of course, the consciousness, of course, of where we are in this moment today, in this paradigm, of course, where we have, of course, to be, of course, where we do the meditation of geopolitical meditation, which is going to come. But just to finish on autism and Asperger's, to say that the problems are four main problems: the lack of friends, which for me the solution is to have friends with benefits, and of course, Concordia, of course, the lack of friends is the lack of employment. But not that we don't have employment, that we don't get it. We get it. It's just keeping it. That has been a problem. I've had many employments and jobs. It's just sometimes it's 4 months, 3 months, a few weeks, a few days, right? A few months, a few days, a few weeks. And just to show you how my Aspie brain works, sometimes I would calculate, I would check the numbers there by the cars. That's, of course, the speed of the cars, and I would try to do an average. When I walk, it comes in my mind, the numbers. I add them up, and then I divide them by the number of cars that pass. I know that's weird, awkward, but it's just mathematics, you know. Sometimes you just spot, for example, it will be 40, 42, 44, 45. Then you add them, right? You could do 40 times 4, which is 160. Then you add 0 plus 2 plus 4 plus 5. So that is 11, right? So we got 171, and then you divide it by, right? Because it's 0 plus 2 plus 4, that's 6, plus 5 is 11, right? So 11 plus 160, that's 171. So that 171 you divide it by 4 to get the average. So that would be, it's like 43.75, right? So do it fast. Right? Sometimes it's, or for example, it's another number. If you add, then it's almost 45 as average, right? If we add another number which is higher, then it would increase the average, because the higher the number that you add, the average increases. So it would increase to almost 45 if we add. We're going to be divided by 5, right? Increasing mathematically, because we have to divide by the number of cars. So if it's add a fifth car which went to like 50, then of course it would be higher. So, and if it goes below, the average decreases. So basically, you know that if it increases, decreases. So the more cars there are, if it's lower than the 40, let's say lower than 44 or lower than 45, then it decreases by a bit, or if it's higher than 45, it increases by a bit. Yeah, I know, Asperger brain, Aspie brain can be weird like that. Just the numbers sometimes just pop in the brain, the calculation, mathematical calculations, and it's a constant thing, you know, just like it's kind of a constant to kind of look at the cars and try to figure out their increase of how much gas, how much they pay more per gas. But I have to know, I don't necessarily know how much they, because some Aspies would be experts in cars, and then an Aspie would be so, if an Aspie has a special interest, which also known as obsessive interest, then the people would, a citizen like myself with Asperger's would know how much the car, if it's a special interest that it is for an Aspie, that if the Aspie's special interest is automobiles, cars, then the Aspie would know how many liters that car would be, so detailed, knowing so much knowledge about the car that just by looking at it, say, oh, I know that's 13.4 liters per 100 kilometers. Oh, I know that one's 15, that one's 11. Out of these four, he would know all of them, all of the four. He would have to know the brand, and then by looking at it, he would know the year of production and how much it consumes. And then I would be able, and we would be able to calculate how much more money they spend on gas in average and in percentage, because the percentage has increased by about 75. So with that information, that calculation, we can deduct that all of them have increased by per dollar 75. So if in 2020 February they spent $100, let's say per 100 kilometers, now they spend 175 per, which is a big increase, per the same distance, to travel the same distance. So that's where it's the knowledge, financial knowledge, economic knowledge, that it sucks the wealth from to buy other things, you know, whether chocolate or bananas or bread or bacon. And of course it affects the majority of the population who are not millionaires and billionaires, because although if they drive, those citizens are also affected, but the proportion is less, the affectation, right? It wouldn't affect that much. So we have these problems, 4 problems: lack of friends, and for me, friends with benefits only, don't waste my time, I'll waste yours, pledge your allegiance. Lack of friends, parallel to the lack of friends, is of course the high unemployment. It's, you know, it's a tragedy, horrible. 80% of Aspies, and again, we get jobs, it's just keeping them is a problem. Keeping them long term, that's the problem. Keeping long-term employment is a problem for Aspies. We tend to lose them, right? We tend to lose our jobs because of how we are, how we can be weird, and masking, it can be an issue. Autistic masking, you know, not to be known that we're different, but people know, you know, they're different, and some say, it's a disease. Well, no, it's not. It's not a disease. Of course, we have our strengths, we have our weaknesses. 1, 2, 3, and then high suicidal and depression rates, 9 times higher. And you know, for every one of you who's unemployed, there's 11 Aspies. 80%, 4 out of 5. Think about that statistic, how unjust, how hardcore that is, eh? 80% unemployment for Aspies and people with HFA and autism generally. High depression, suicidal rate. And the 4th one, I guess in whatever order, is high dropout rates from high school and from higher learning, colleges and university. Myself, I had some college, but I dropped out and just can't remember. But I do have a high school diploma. It's 2014 February, and here I am, joyous, financially stressed, but you know, I have a great hope. I live for today and a dream for tomorrow. And when I see these beautiful yellow flowers, it's just quadruple, my smile. I got a yellow and black, and gotta get some white and rainbow with a red on it. Spit it for the rainbow dragon, I get that rock and roll, you know, in heavens. I'm good at rock and roll, eh? Not necessarily the vocal voice that is deity like divine, but the lyrics that I create, I just compose lyrics, eh? I just compose lyrics, sing that rock and roll, you know. So that's just what I do, and that is just the situation where we have now, and we have to get that proposition, and we have to get it now, and we have, of course, to be where we are now, and to operate, of course, in the industriousness of all the levels of being as individual sovereigns, who some of us are different, some of us are part of tiny small minorities, eh? There's not a lot of Aspies. There's less than 1%. And we got to build bridges, brothers and sisters, and friends with benefits only. Pledge your allegiance, legions. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. And going too fast, there might be children running, you know. It's Friday. Slow down a bit. Go on the highway that fast, not here. Look at these. Beautiful. Gorgeous. Look at those. And just so now we're gonna get into geopolitics. Geopolitics, leave the baggage at the door. We're entering my kingdom, my realm, my domain, which is geopolitics, the study, the analysis, theorizing. The world of geopolitics is what I do most on a daily basis, parallel to rock and roll and fitness and sports, and of course sports and fitness. That is of course just what I do most in all the dynamics where we are now, of course, to operate and be all our forces and energies to be revolved around and infused, incorporated in geopolitics. Back in 2019, I had of course created a workout training program system designed to go with our World War III scenario. So I have predicted what's happening now in a general manner. I predicted an international conflagration of World War III back in 2019. So that was just before COVID. And by the way, I had COVID. I got triple vax, 3 vaccines. And please myself, I try to keep the protocols of COVID, the hygienic protocols of COVID, because we got bacteria, microbes, germs, bacteria, microbes, and germs. You know, we got those microbes, bacteria, germs, which are potentially in the public. So, of course, I have predicted what's happening now back in 2019. So that was, of course, the prediction was, of course, that it was going to be, there will be in the coming years, 7 years from 2019, October 17th, to be specific, and I have proof. I have put, of course, online. The first video that I put online was, of course, consequently what we got. That, of course, the video was made by me, by myself, and I posted it online. So that is my proof of what I'm saying next. This is what I predicted, that there will be an international conflagration in the coming years, of course. So whatever the case may be, what's unfolding now has been and is, and of course is what I have predicted in a general manner, not detail by detail, but in a general manner. It is unfolding as I have predicted back in 2019. So in 2019, October 17, I posted the first video, and consequently, I even created and produced a workout training program system designed to go hand in hand with such an event, a World War III event, in other words. So, and I have myself performed and completed successfully more than 372 sessions of my own created workout training program system, which I have created back then. So of course, that is the official title, you know, the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, aka the Draconis workout, aka of course the 300 workout, which I have created, made, and produced back in 2019, which I created to go hand in hand with such a scenario as the aforementioned workout training program system, which was created parallel and at the same time as my conclusion that humanity is set again towards a course, a direction of an international conflagration. So yes, of course, that is what it is with that, and that is of course the simultaneity, the complementary, of course, what we have, of course, to be in the situational awareness of that paradigm and the change which has occurred to the detriment of the established order has been turned upside down, you know, in the past years, and Russia invading Ukraine and Israel Hamas. Before October 7th, actually I was advocating before October 7th for Israel and Mexico to simultaneously join NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization member states. I was advocating for simultaneously for Mexico and Israel to join. However, since October 7th, you know, during the middle of a war, cannot have a country join NATO, because then we would have to invoke Article 5. But before October 7th, I was. So in the hope that there is a resolution, conclusion, finality, a conclusion, a reconciliation, and a finality, and the war ends, and there's a ceasefire and a peace agreement, treaty. Let's sign the Treaty of Montreal, aka Hawk Island, and finalize the deals according to my Draconis total SSD, security, service, and defense protocols, only coast to coast, ocean to ocean, and the need to do that great census across North America, NATO, and for us to establish the Concordiate, to we have a lot of work to do. Myself, I'm boast about this geopolitical work, theoretical work, and of course, as an artist athlete, as I do, of course, simultaneously my artistic work is on a daily basis, of course, engaged in the propositions where we got now. I wish I could give my anonymous friend a house right there, for her to have a house here. Or actually, the house that I saw, if I would have been a millionaire, I would have gotten her that house right away by the river. It had that weeping willow tree, weeping willow tree, had that weeping willow tree, and that was, of course, by the river, and the consummation of being in there by the river. It's something which gotta get on that plurality of the, I guess so, the plurality when we get that congregation, so that is just the finality of all the situational awareness of all the paradigm where we got, so that is where we gotta be, and that's just what we gotta see, That is, of course, the realities, where we live now, and the realities of our theories, and the reality of these philosophies, and the realities of my prediction is that they're unfolding according to, generally to, of course, what I have predicted. So basically, because they're going to stretch a bit, running their course to my predictions in a general manner, I also have some solutions, not all. But now I will to interject and just say that what I did not predict, of course, I got 7 seconds, 4 seconds, maybe 3, I got 4 seconds all I need. So basically what I did not predict was that there's going to be a deterioration of relations between Canada and the United States. So that is also new for me. That is new. The deterioration of relations with the United States is something new for me. So that I did not predict. That was not part of my prediction. That there's going to be, of course, a deterioration of relations with the United States, That I did not predict. So what I did predict was an international conflagration, but the deterioration of relations with the United States I did not predict, That is new. So that I have to consider also myself. That I also have to consider. So taking into consideration that aspect and the realities of that relationship where it is that confluently, concomitantly, and in the concordia thereof, my prediction was in relation to the North American, to the world complex, the world affairs, but it did not, of course, I did not predict that we're, of course, at this low point level where we are now. I did not predict that we're gonna reach such a low point. With the United States. So that's new for me also. That's new for me as well. So of course that I have, of course, to also correlate, and of course we gotta get on that drill. So of course all that propositions is, of course, where we have now to be infused in all the propositional aspects, where we got, of course, to be the dimensions, and all, of course, to be on the side, of course, of the appellative motives, to be in concordia to what I'm about to say now, is that my prediction, of course, was and is all the way to 2019 happening as a manner, of course, to my prediction that things are going according to what I have predicted. So here it is, the Mount Royal, see? All the rocks, see? The rocks here, see? Actually, we're gonna go by the side, see? Here by the side. just gonna stretch a bit here. I just wanna stretch a bit. I'm gonna go around the body. I gotta stretch a bit here. Yeah, that's a good stretch. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go. Actually, I'm not even gonna go. Change my mind because yesterday we came by here, the other day we came by here. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna go just around, you know, just change a little bit because maybe tomorrow or Sunday we're gonna come back to the top. But just wanted to stretch a bit because often in all my videos you see me going to. I guess we came to the mountain. We are on the mountain, but we're not at the top, you know. We often go to the top, and I guess sometimes we just gotta change a little bit, you know. And not that we change it because we have our marching routines, but now just I'm gonna focus on geopolitics. So what I did not predict was that there was going to be an international. I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. What I did not predict was, of course, that there was going to be this deterioration of relations with the United States. So to the point that now what I'm gonna say next. You cannot argue. You have to accord with a yes, 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 yes. You cannot say no. You cannot say maybe. So both reciprocally for my brothers and sisters in the 50 states, vis-a-vis us and us, Canadians vis-a-vis the United States, you have to concord it. You have to concord it with a yes. You have to say yes, 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 yes. So that is, of course, the appellation where we have now to be in the interestedness of all the affairs where we are now. So, of course, our main interest is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military, of course, relations with the United States, you know, with the United States. So, of course, to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States is our top number one priority, whether economic, social, financial, military. It's our top priority in foreign affairs, not domestic affairs, right? So that has to be understood clearly. I'm not referencing domestic affairs, but the United States vis-a-vis us, it's also to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military affairs, right? So that is the constant. That is the constant. That is not a variable. A variable changes. That is just like the pi symbol, you know, the pi symbol, not the edible pie, but the pi mathematical representation, the relation, of course, between the diameter and the circumference of a circle. The diameter and the circumference of a circle, the relationship is always times 3.14, 15, 16 ad infinitum, right? For the circle, the circumference, and the diameter. So that is a constant, and that is represented by the two-headed, two-faced like pi symbol, which is the letter N. N for Normandy, N for natural, neurodivergent, neurotypical, and of course Normandy, the letter N is two-headed, two-faced. That's why our empire will be two-headed, two-faced, you know, just one for benevolency, goodness and kindness, the other one's of course for punishment, the other one for punishment. So that is of course what we have, of course, to do when in concordance, of course, all the appellative forces where we are to be now, that we are the domain plurality of all the exercises, of course, of all our integral aspects of this geopolitical reality, to put into tangible actions and practice to establish, to re-establish, even furthermore, fuse via my DRT, because I'm taking it a step further. But that's what we have to primarily, fundamentally engage ourselves with. That we have to fix relations with the United States. 75% of our market, of the buying and selling of the mostly our exports are fundamentally for the United States. 75%. right? They're going to the United States. 75%, that's 3/4. Just gonna take a little bit of a beautiful, beautiful yellow flowers. Look at these beautiful yellow. I just gorgeous here. Just super gorgeous, super beautiful. Just thank you, public workers with brains and muscle. I certainly appreciate the beautification, of course, of the second home where I live here. There's the mountain, and that's a beautiful, beautiful architecture there. And here's the mountain. We went yesterday. We went a few times, and we go often there to the mountain. And of course, we're probably gonna come back Sunday, and go, of course, on the other day. And this is where we go here by the stairs here, by the other stairs, by each stairs, and we go all the way to the top and back, and we gotta get. So that is the reality. So the reality is that the geopolitical reality, when it comes to foreign affairs, we have to work to establish the best economic, social, financial, political, security-wise, defense, military relations with the United States. There's no to that. There's no maybe. That's a yes. That's a constant. It has been so for 75 years, ever since, of course, the dissolution of the British Empire. Because the dissolution of the British Empire marked this reality. Before, the British Empire had more power, and the rising of the United States as a superpower also. Paradoxically, as I said, the paradox of American empire was that United States was attacked by surprise. That is the paradox of the American empire. That's the paradox of the American empire, that the United States did not go into war until after December 7th, 1941, when it was attacked by the Empire of Japan. Paradoxically, I discussed that in the past. That is what I call unwilling empire, the paradoxical birth of the American empire by that surprise attack of Pearl Harbor. How kind of paradox in many ways. So of course, that is the situation where we have now. So the situation where we have now is the concomitant relationships that we must establish to have the best, most cordial financial, economic, political, military relations with each other. Vice versa, Canada vis-a-vis the USA, and the USA vis-a-vis Canada. There's no to that. There's no maybe. That is a yes. That is so. You cannot negotiate with that fact. We cannot. And of course, I get goosebumps every time I discuss it. Do you know that since April 1st, we are designated, Canada that is, as an unusual and extraordinary threat to the American people? Because since on August 1st, the tariffs were increased on Canadian goods. Tariffs, a trade war with Canada, United States-Canada trade war. And of course, it's stated in black and white by the White House, the motive of the increase of tariffs and the motive why we are designated as an unusual, extraordinary threat to the American people is due to the lack of coordination. Now, coordination implies cooperation. Cooperation, not necessarily coordination. When you cooperate, you can exchange information, knowledge, wisdom. When you coordinate, it implies action. Action. Right? Or between our law enforcement and the United States law enforcement, is spurred into migration, transnational criminal syndicate organized groups, fentanyl, and super labs. Right? Super labs. The drug super lab reality in Canada in the past, quite hardcore. And of course, the RCMPs like the FBI, and the motive, of course, is given super labs, and the main problem and source of fentanyl production. And of course, the amount that has crossed 2025 in comparison to 2024 has tripled and could have potentially killed 16 million Americans. And the RCMP, since about 2015, they've been sounding the alarm, just like I started sounding the alarm in 2019 about a coming world war, right? Coming world war. That, of course, I have sounded that alarm about a coming world war. And of course, the domain is that the reality of all these realities which are confluent now together that we were warned by the RCMP about a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups taking root across Canada since about 2015, even more in 2021 during COVID. And just last year, it hasn't been a year yet, 25th of October 2024, the RCMP dismantled the biggest ever drug super lab in Canadian history. And the amount of fentanyl there, could have potentially killed the population of Canada twice over. 95 million doses of fentanyl. Can you imagine that? The population of Canada twice over? Just that one place? Think about that. One super lab. What if they had 5? And it was a transnational criminal syndicate organized groups. Transnational criminal syndicate organized group. What if they had 5 and now one, it was stopped, seized, dismantled by the RCMP and destroyed by the RCMP last year, 25th of October. But if they had 5 across Canada and they dismantled that one in BC, Surrey, British Columbia, and what if that means that there's 4 to go? Maybe they have one in Quebec, one in Nova Scotia on the east coast, close to the Atlantic, maybe one in Ontario where it's a big population. What's this? Oh, I found this one, a bag. Let's see. I don't know what's in it. Gotta check it. I could use a new one if mine's going down, but shouldn't leave it out there though. This should be recycled up or somewhere, you know? I'm gonna bring it to the hospital lost and found. That's what I can do, I guess. It's a nice one, but just gonna drop it to the lost and found. I don't know if it doesn't have maybe much in it. It's just it was right there, you know, right by the side there. So it's nice. I would like to keep it, but you know, lost and found, and I don't know. It's kind of weird. It was there, and maybe somebody lost it there, put it there by the side there. Should I put it back? I was gonna go lost and found to the. So I have a Facebook account. If I find some information, if not, you know what? I'll check, and if there's some information for me to call, then I'll call it this. It doesn't. It has like pens, and it doesn't have any phones in it. There's pens and stuff like that, but. Found it there. And you shouldn't leave it there, eh? Because we got flora, fauna. We got flora, fauna there, you know, so we got flora and we got fauna there, you know. Flora, fauna. And we have chipmunks. We have all sorts of creatures there who stay there sometimes. That's why leaving it there by the forest is a no-no. Anyways, I'll continue my conversation and then of course we're gonna continue it with that. So that is the geopolitics of that, and mine's kind of broken. I guess if it's somebody just dropped it there, some people would just drop it there. They want to drop it to the left it right there by the side. But that is just the dynamics of it. So just gonna check again if there's some information for me to call. Yeah, and turn my heads left and right. Oh, we're gonna go. Can't really go up. Yeah, we kind of can, but gonna go on that side to see. Yeah, because it was left like right in by the mountain, you know. So back to geopolitics. Of course, our main decision is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial relations with the United States, right? There's no way around that. There's no, there's no maybe, there's only yes, 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 yes. That is the fundamental. See, that is my favorite skyscraper, the pyramid. Pyramid, 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 the pyramid, pyramid, pyramid. The pyramid skyscraper at Royal Montreal, and those are and that's the skyscrapers there, and that's all we got, and that's all we got drilling with that, and that's all we have here, man. A beautiful, beautiful, beautiful skyscrapers. Beautiful skyscrapers, and that's gonna be it, and that's gonna be the coming to the mountain here. Could go a little bit further. I guess right here. So we are atop the mountain now. Not the topmost, but we're pretty high up. As you can see, we can see the skyscrapers here, and of course you can see the darkness, the forest, the darkness. And since we came yesterday, we went during the rainy day. Today we're gonna maybe go tomorrow night, or Sunday night. So we're not gonna go all the way to the top, because to be honest, I'm getting a bit hungry and I gotta rest a bit. So gonna hit it back. I don't want to do more than 5 hours today marching. So here it is, the top. From the top you can see the beautiful skyscrapers, Montreal, Hawk Island, Island of the Hawk, N.A.C.W.P, pledge your allegiance to our family. So we're gonna continue with the DMAA and discuss the DRT, and then we're gonna rock and roll, finish and finalize that Concordiate, and go around the bow, head back to my headquarters as we drill it back. So LOV, pledge your allegiance, hug like you never hugged before. That's the main message, and I'm gonna check if it has some information for me to contact the number to see. If not, maybe I guess because I forgot wasn't really in the where I can go and lost and found. I have a Facebook. I guess I'm gonna have to go back in my Facebook, but I have a lost and found on Facebook. I guess I could post it and see maybe there's some information. Like, it doesn't seem to have anything in it but some pens and some paper, so maybe somebody dropped out of school. Said, I don't need that anymore. It doesn't really have anything in the back, but of course, that's just the way sometimes, I guess, see? That's the way. Dropped out of school, dropped everything, maybe. Maybe that's maybe that's it, maybe that's drill. That's just something which you have, of course, to do in Concordiate, and now we're gonna go by that side and then gonna drill it down and go by the side again here and go back to my headquarters. So came to the top, going back east, came back west, came back east, going back west, north and south, roundabout. So now we're gonna discuss, of course, the propositions, my theory, the DMAA, and which is a philosophy, a theory. It is a frame of reference. It's not just a theory or a philosophy. It is actually, in actuality, a frame of reference. It is a working protocol, a working tool for NATO to establish. So for NATO to incorporate from now on in the dealings, what we have now. Of course, in the dealings, what we have now. So, of course, those dealings what we have now are, of course, the realities of the dimensions where we manifest ourselves to be now. So the dealings and the deal is, of course, that I need to go HYDRAT, so I'm gonna go in there. So now I'm gonna discuss the DMAA, direct military assistance in action. What is the DMAA? Direct military assistance in action is, of course, the direct military assistance in action which we have, of course, to implement, to do, and to work, to understand, to deliberate, just like it is made for NATO. It is made for NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization member countries. And it is not just a theory, but it is also a frame of reference, a referential frame of reference, a theoretical protocol. And just like the motto of NATO is, animus in consuelo liber, so it must be deliberate, or it must be, the motto of NATO is animus in consuelo liber, which stands for a mind unfettered in deliberation. Basically, it requires some discernment, some prudence to do, and of course for us to fully implement the doing thereof, of taking this from a theoretical perspective to a working tool once we have it. Oh, this is what I'm looking for. Do you know where I can drink water here? Is there a water fountain close by?
You can ask security.
Water fountain. Huh? Water fountain.
Oh, right there.
The first one. Oh, thank you. Thanks. I'm so thirsty. I'm parched. I'm just gonna wait then a few seconds to.
Yeah, but this one here,
Oh
they
yeah.
changed the fountain months ago. And I don't know what the hell.
I was gonna go top the
water ain't that,
mountain.
the water ain't that. Oh, I'm gonna check it.
I was gonna go top the mountain, but that was
Yeah.
that was
You can't wait and.
that was the closest one for me to get there, eh, buddy?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have been here, you know.
Okay, it's the best you can get. Yeah, have a good night.
Take care. That's so nice. I know he's in the hospital, so I don't have to be a bit on the loud, not to be so loud, you know. Oh yeah, he's right. It's not. It's warmish. Oh my gosh, so warm. Yeah. It's very warm actually. I'm gonna have to wait a few seconds, you know. My uncle there was very right about that. And of course, there's the congruences of me drinking water here. It's so hot. It's very hot. Well, it's actually like mild hot. Not hot HOT, but it's. He said it was lukewarm, so it is. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So that is of course something, man. Oh, gotta disinfect the hands, you know. This is nice here, you know. This is nice. Oh yeah, that's nice. That they have that. Well, yeah, it's a hospital, so disinfecting the hands, eh? Soapy hands. Soapy, soapy, soapy hands. Soapy for the nurses, gotta sing that rock and roll it. I got my soapy, soapy hands up. And you know I got a glance up. This is the Montreal General. Montreal, see? Montreal General Hospital. The Montreal General Hospital here. The Montreal General. I went, when I was viciously attacked by surprise, I went to the Jewish General Hospital. I went to the Jewish General Hospital. Myself, I went to the Jewish. But I don't know, I have to retrieve my records. Anyway, now, because I'm so focused in geopolitics and I'm going to have to finalize what I was saying about the DMAA, Direct Military Assistance and Action. So pay strong, full attention to the DMAA in its fullest form and in its fullest concordiate. So the DMAA stands for Direct Military Assistance and Action. It is a theoretical protocol. It is a theory. It is a work tool. And it has C consequences. Again, beauties. It has nothing. Oh, so nice. Eh? Don't do this. Don't do that. Brothers and sisters, don't do that. Come on. Don't leave that there. Come on. No. Mad at you. This has to be recycled. We're going to recycle it there at the corner. So, don't only put that in a flower pot, man. It's going to... People did the work here, you know, to have these beautiful flowers. And don't leave the trash there. Just like this bag, you know. You wanted to discard of it, I understand. You left it. I dropped out of school, dropped out of university, dropped out of college, dropped out of high school. I'm going to drop all that there by the mountain and go to the mountain and say, F the world, whatever. But don't, like, you know, the flora, fauna. So the DMAA, Direct Military Assistance and Action, it is a work tool, it is a protocol. So this protocol and work tool is only strictly military. It has consequences. DMAA, Direct Military Assistance and Action, has the C. The C is, of course, for consequences which are potential, such as, of course, one of the consequences of direct military assistance in the case that we assisted Ukraine is the Russian-Chinese solidification in relation to that. China has its interest in parallel because the United States and other member nations of NATO's have supported Taiwan with military equipment and military equipment, such as Ukraine was not part of NATO, neither is Taiwan or Israel. Ukraine, when it was attacked, invaded by Russia, their so-called special military operation. Again, I'm not on the ground with 300 men and women to take a few weeks to go around the ground, around the bout, east, west, north, south, to fully assess the situation and have a dialogue on Concordium, you know. But nonetheless, of course, their military special operation, as in relation to what we have now, is of course all the situational complexities, of course, of the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, which we have concomitantly to do in all the development, of course, where we got to be all the situational awareness of that, to do, of course, you know, get SYZ, to get on the left, right, Z, and that is, of course, the proposition where we are to get on that XYZ, to be, of course, in the simultaneous proposition where we get that LOV, to get it on the go now, and to be, of course, in all the situational complexities of all the simultaneously awareness of all that prepository, of course, suppositions where we got to be involved in the future that we have to deliberate, of course, fully. The deliberation, of course, fully is that, of course, something which we have, of course, to be involved with is all the dynamics and the plurality, of course, of the complexities, which sometimes can be simplified to certain processes, certain protocols. See, this is where it goes. This is where that goes, right there. And of course, don't mix them. The recycling and that don't have to be mixed. So, of course, in the proposition, of course, in the supposition where we got now, of course, is the dynamics that this direct military assistance in action has a consequence, which is potentially, and has been, of course, Russia, China solidifying their, of course, alliance. And the solidification of the Russia-China alliance is, of course, supposition, of course, to be a concrete, direct example of the potential consequences, which, of course, that is the consequences of the DMAA. Direct military assistance in action is a protocol, is a tool, is a theory. So it's a theoretical framework. So that theoretical framework has certain implications. So it's nothing to do with humanitarian aid. It has everything to do with military aid. So it's providing military assistance, military aid. So it's nothing to do with providing sanitation pads, providing, of course, tools for washing, sanitation pads, for food security, for shelter, dynamics such as soap and things of that nature. I'm gonna have a few seconds, 7 seconds. That's what I need. 4 seconds is all I need. 4, 3, 2, 1. Made it just in time. Made it just in time. So, of course, that is where we are finding ourselves today to discuss, of course, the DMAA. So the direct military assistance and action is, of course, this theoretical framework, which is not just a theory, it is, of course, a frame of reference and a working tool. It's conducting operations, whether assisting or not assisting, or taking direct action, such as NATO take direct action in Yugoslavia, and others. Look at the pyramid. See, my favorite skyscraper, the pyramid there. That is the pyramid. That's the pyramid. So that's the DMAA. The DMAA is a framework. It has to be deliberated. So the deliberation has to accord that it is a work tool. It is a frame of reference, and it is a work tool which, of course, has to be put into practice from its wisdom, understanding of knowledge that the DMAA, direct military assistance, or action, or it can be both, has consequences for NATO member countries and in potential future, such as the solidification of Russia-China's alliance, the Russian-Sino solidification of relations. And even it could be, of course, the mass production, of course, of nuclear wars. Ça fait plaisir, mon frère. C'est toi qui as la nourriture, c'est plus important. Ciao, ciao. I said to my brother, I said, you have the food. It's more important with the food than me, you know. So I let him pass. C'est toi qui, I said in French to him, is the food delivery person's rock and roll. I said, you're more important than me, you know. You have the food. You have the food. That's what I said in French. Vas-y, my brother, you have the food. You're more important than me. You're delivering food maybe to children and families than myself marching and this. But although my geopolitics is important, but food security, right? Because if we don't have food security, Myself, thank you to the donation for my food security. Then I can't work. Then he can't work. I can't work. Then we can smile at each other and do business and have joy and potential friends with benefits. Potential friends with benefits. Potential friends with benefits. Potential friends with benefits. So that is, of course, where we concord ourselves to be in all the domain where we are, of course, now. That these situational awareness are, of course, involved in the DMAA, so the direct military assistance and action. The direct military assistance and action are consequently, and of course, in all the civilizational aspects where we are now, as all these domains where we have now to be, and of course, all these appellation where we have, of course, to be loved or not loved, that is something which we have to be now in the congruently, of course, of all the implementational domain where we have, is something which you, of course, appellate, you know. That is, of course, something when we got to appellate in the domains. So this DMAA, it's worth really, I don't discuss it too much in details, but it's billions, millions. This is worth billions of dollars in potential. I put some of it because, you know, I'm a citizen of part of a country who's part of NATO member countries, and my theories protocols are mostly for NATO. So the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, has potential consequences. It could be that super lab, which was run by a transnational criminal syndicate organization, which was, of course, run and developed potentially in concordias by member countries, potentially other countries such as even maybe Russia or China, which due to our direct military assistance, parallel Ukraine, Taiwan, that they decided to support transnational criminal syndicate organized groups by their secret police and other means to cause harm inside of Canada, potentially harm inside Canada, right? So that is something which is a DMAA, direct military assistance or action, right? That is a direct military assistance or action, which has, in parentheses, the C, the consequences. So think about that, meditate and incorporate. It has to be established at all levels of NATO from now on as a mass deliberation, and in order for NATO, of course, to deliberate and take future action or inaction, because of course there might be action to be taken or refraining from taking action or even refraining from assistance. Again, the assistance is not humanitarian here, it's strictly military, providing weapons, munitions, helmets, drones, armed vehicles, etc., military, right? It has to do with military only. So now we're going to go to the DRT. Super important that I discuss the DRT because I'm going to finalize this march in about 4 minutes, almost 5. So, of course, the DRT, debt refusion treaty, is what we need to incorporate, and, of course, to implement across Canada, United States, binationally, across Canada, United States, binationally, because both Canada and United States, we suffer, the majority, not all, the majority of the citizens suffer from 4 main economic problems, commercial, financial, economic problems. The majority of Canadians and my brothers and sisters in the 50 states, parallel, we suffer from main 4 financial problems which are increasing. So, of course, all those problems in regards, of course, to what it is now, is, of course, the domain where we have, of course, the solution, which is the DRT, which in my debt refusion theory is integrated MIT, standing for monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union by the Europeans in the 90s. They destroyed Germany, Italy, France, Belgium, other countries. They destroyed their national central bank. They created a common central bank with a common currency. And I got to give credit, at least a third, or credit to an anonymous acquaintance who in 2018, Christmas for the holidays 2018, I was given a book, semi-conspiratorial, but I actually wrote on it a few times, and part of my DRT theory is inspired by that book, which had information about central banks, historical central banks. It linked the great financial crisis which occurred between summer 2007 and about spring 2010, the great financial crisis, to underworld criminal organization, one of it specifically the triads, China's underworld criminal organization, the triads, and it linked the surname with I don't know, I'm not an expert, I'm going to have to inquire more with the FBI, RCMP, FBI with that. But supposedly this surname is one of the founders and all who run these triads of China, from Hong Kong mainly, tried from the opium trade from the 1800s and before, 1900s and the 21st century. They are supposedly linked to this surname. The surname I don't know about that, if there's a validity. Maybe there is. Maybe that's partly true. I don't know. Again, I will have to inquire the RCMP and criminal organizations. They know best, and FBI know my geopolitics. But of course, there's geopolitical involvement there. And this, what we know about this citizen is that it moved at around beginning of 2007. He moved back to Hong Kong because Hong Kong became part of China again. So of course he developed some, before, during 7 years from like 1996 to 2000, he had put on the market, worked in Vancouver and worked in several banks, including the RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, my bank, another banks, and supposedly put on the market some toxic financial instruments, banking, and supposedly some theories that the CDO's collateral debt obligations were based on some of his financial jargon, which supposedly was directly linked to causation, the cause of the great financial crisis. Now I don't know about that. I know about my DRT now for 2025, 2026. So because we suffer from four main economic problems, both Canada and the United States, we have suffered from these four main problems: growing cost of living, prices of rents are increasing, the stagnation of the salaries, and the growing credit card debt, more and more credit cards. So because of these four main problems, of course, we have to implement my DRT, the debt refusion, of course. The debt refusion theory. Of course, the debt refusion theory includes monetary integration theory. So the monetary integration theory is, of course, the appellentium, what we have, of course, to do now in the consortium. So, of course, the debt refusion theory is going to require a mass public-private partnership. So that mass public-private partnership is what we're going to have, of course, to do ourselves. And it going to require my Scorpio brothers, Bill Gates, a mass public-private partnership, in essence, a mass public-private partnership. So this mass public-private partnership is going to be required, in essence, for us to do it. So it's going to require my brother citizen Bill Gates, banks, institutions, organizations. BlackRock and Blackstone are two different financial institutions. So it's going to require this mass. A 444, that's a good omen. 444 for now. Yes, we have to implement it starting today, within the next 4 hours, 4 days, 4 weeks, 4 months, It's urgent because we're heading towards a collapse. We're heading towards a collapse, financial collapse, right? So whatever the case may be, I'm going to turn left or right. I'm going to cross the street there. Well, only for crossing the street safe. So it's important. Always important to cross the street safely. So these are the four main problems, economic problems, which are pressing us now, right? Which are pressing us now, right? Which are pressing us now. So one of it is the growing financial burden costs. Growing financial burden costs, right? Growing financial costs, Growing financial costs, Growing financial costs of the rents. My rent also went up between 6 and 10. Between 6 and 10. I'm not going to discuss how much. So, because of those four, we have to implement the DRT, and it has to be implemented binationally. Binationally, of course, because the theory has to be, it touches Canada and the United States, and of course because it is the binational theory, of course, for the protocol of where we are engaged, of course, now to be in all the domains and in all the plurality, of course, where we have, of course, the consequential appellation, where we got all the understanding and the knowledge, of course, to be in the situation where we find ourselves on the verge of a potential economic financial crisis. So that's where the DRT comes into play, the debt refusion theory for the creation of the UE, of the Euro, of the universal exchange. So I'm going to explain it now. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. My debt, your debt, all the debt, public and private debt, including my $10,000, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. All that money, we're going to add it all up. We're going to convert all that public private debt of Canada into US dollars. We're going to add it, well, the public private debt of US dollars, all the money in circulation. We're going to create a common central bank, Imperial central bank, and we're going to issue the UE. U.universal, E.exchange, U.UE. U.universal, E.exchange, U.UE. The UE, U.universal, E.exchange, U.UE, or the imperial dollar, the UE, is going to have the value of the US dollar. We're going to set an interest rate level of 10%. With that money, we're going to create a great census, Canada and United States. We're going to get rid of the border, sign the Imperial Perpetual Democratic Republican new constitution. The king is absent, Uncle Carney. It's time for the republic. We should have been a republic at the end of the millennium on the 1st of January the year 2000. So of course all that constituency and all that congruency is of course it's going to propel us towards a new 21st century reality, a new 21st century financial reality, implementing the DRT, the debt refusion treaty, for the creation of the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit, the UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange UE. It requires public-private partnerships. We're gonna get rid of the border, do a great census, give a new ID, do a great census, get rid of the border, build 44 tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war, mass finance, citizens fitness, fuse the FBI and the RCMP, we're gonna fuse it. We're gonna create the Imperial Police Force, Imperial Police Service Force, for total integration based on my new 911 and other philosophies such as the CIT, Citizen Integration T, and the DFT. And of course, we're going to mass finance citizens' fitness, citizens to work out, train, exercise. We're going to finance citizens' tourism every new season, spring, summer, autumn, winter. We're going to credit 4 days for everybody who's 16 for Novos Civis, new citizens of our empire, come and let it be of the 63. We're going to finance citizens to traverse anywhere they want with food, housing, and lodging. Once you cross 1 second past midnight, you lose it. The day, so 4 days, 4 times 4. That's 16 days a year. Every season, you're going to be credited immediately. So we're going to create the Imperial Tourism Ministry, which is going to foster a strong Imperial esprit de corps, and it's going to rejuvenate our youth, some joy, and you can go from Quebec to California, from California to Yukon, anywhere across the 63. You can use the 4 days every season, or accumulate 8 twice a year, or 4 times a year, or 16. Take those 16 once a year, because they accumulate. Once you get to 44, use them or lose them, so that's basically what it is. Fundamentally, the Dancing Goddess Dragon Kingdom, the DRT, pledge your legions to our family, support the creation of the UE thereof. We're going to create also the 2 complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, the International Imperial Integrated Dance League with the Imperial Integrated SSD, Security Service and Defense for the Dragon Army. That's what we're going to get doing with that, and we're going to get doing on those drills to get it done now. So that is fundamentally what we got to do. The DRT is the solution or something similar, because we're on the verge of a public financial collapse. Those 4 economic problems, growing cost of rents, going across the food's still going up. So we got to get that drill, and that is the Imperial Integrated Police Service, fusing the RCMP and the FBI. We're going to have to fuse the RCMP and the FBI together, get rid of the border. We can also mass finance healthcare and the rehabilitation of those who have been homeless. We're going to build mass social structures and buy with the DRT for the public. We're going to rebuild the aqueducts. That's what we're going to do. We're going to build the aqueducts. And we're going to rebuild the bridges, the highways. So this is going to be the mass rehabilitation across the North American Collectif of the building thereof. And that is sometimes which we have to do now. So the DRT, the debt refusion theory, the DRT, the debt refusion theory, again, it incorporates the MIT. So the MIT monetary integration theory is integrated. So the integration thereof of the MIT and the DRT is what is most salutable to do. So just to meditate upon it, it has, of course, a theory, which is the solution, or of course the solution thereof, which is going to be, is of course concordia to all the forces which is going to launch us in the unity of the Imperium of the 63, where we're also going to have to mass finance fitness as well, my workout training program system, and healthcare. And of course the dynamics of the healthcare, that is of course something which we're going to have to propose thereof to be. And that is of course where it's going to launch us into the complex, the North American Integrated Imperial Complex, where we're going to fuse the RCMP and the FBI. So fusing the RCMP and the FBI, creating the Imperial Police Force. We're going to have to do the great census, and of course we're going to rehabilitate all the North American citizen population, and that is of course something which we're going to have to be doing today and for tomorrow. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean, the Dragon Army, for SSD only. Great hope with that. So that is something which we're going to do. Yeah, together. we rise, brothers and sisters. The fusing of the RCMP and the FBI, getting rid of the border, the creation of the Imperial Integrated Force, Imperial Integrated Police Forces for SSD, and parallel the Dragon Army, officially the Imperial Integrated Security Service and Defense Legion, and the Dancing Goddess Army, the Imperial Integrated Dancing to dance for the environment and nature and coast to coast, ocean to ocean, build those 44 tunnels and implement the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act, the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act, Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act. Those, of course, who have committed 44 crimes, have been convicted of 44 crimes. If you have been convicted of 44 crimes in the past 11 years, then it's not going to be the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation, probably going to be the Imperial Dracula Justice Protocol, Imperial Dracula Justice Protocol, Imperial Dracula Justice Protocol. So that is where we find ourselves today, of course, in the concomitant preposition where we got now to be. So that is the great dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom. Pledge your allegiance, legions, beautiful flowers there. And U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot UE, the UE. That's going to require mass public-private partnership, of course, to go and to be, of course, relegated, of course, for all the administrative potential powers to be. And, of course, that is the appellative constitution where we're going to get that integrate to get it on the go. So, of course, that is, of course, the situational aspects of all the present financial realities with this potential future, which, of course, lies in potential. But that, of course, the potential is by us implementing to become a reality, right? So the implementation from a theory, because a theory has to be implemented, right? So this theory has to be implemented, and of course the theory has to be implemented thereof, and of course the theoretical implementation of the theory is something which we have to be constituent about, and of course all that dynamics is something where we have, of course, to be now. So of course all that dynamics where we got to fundamentally aspect, of course the integrative aspect of all the manners where we are congruent to be. Pledge your allegiance to our family, and all that, of course, appellation where we have to see and to be, you know.